feel like my journey has been very weird, and at that moment I felt like I made it. My experience of working at big companies like PayPal and Slack, and how I entered the front-end industry and how I decided to be a front-end developer. Hello. Hi, in this video, I want to talk about how I got started into tech. I've been working in the industry for 10 years. And even though I went to school for traditional computer science / computer engineering, which is what I did, I feel like my journey has been very weird. So in this video, I want to talk about how I got started as a front-end engineer, currently working at Slack, and my experience of working at big companies like PayPal and Slack, and small companies, and how I entered the front-end industry and how I decided to be a front-end developer. So I was born in India and I grew up in India. I lived there until I was in grade 12. I've been raised in Chandigarh most of my life, which is a city in Punjab in India. It is a beautiful city and it's so green. It's one of the cleanest cities in India. I love that city. So anyways, I started my engineering degree in University of British Columbia. I did 4 years of engineering school there. I had taken my first HTML lesson when I was in grade 8. And I was learning HTML and was it JavaScript or was it jQuery and CSS? So HTML, CSS, and either jQuery or JavaScript. I don't know. Was there a dollar sign? I don't know. And I had some introduction to HTML, CSS. But when I chose my major in school, I took computer and electrical engineering, which is called ECE in UBC. So you get to choose between engineering and computer science. And I went the engineering route. So I wasn't quite certain what kind of engineer I wanted to be. Although I had kind of made up my mind that I was going to be an engineer. Because as a brown student, you only have two choices, either engineer or doctor. So I chose the engineering route. But I wasn't sure what kind of engineer I wanted to be. But in my first year of college, I took this computer science class. And what's the name of professor? Was it Paul Carter? I took his computer science 101 class and we were learning C. And when I started teaching about C and how you could write a variable and that could do something for like 100 times without you actually doing it, I was like, what else can I do? And then he taught us about print statements. Executing functions. And when he taught us about executing function, I was like, I can make magic. I can control anything. It was such an empowering feeling. And at that moment, I realized I wanted to learn more of this. So then in my second term, I took C++. C++ was like meh, solid meh. Was it also C? I don't know. Oh, this was in second term. Or was it in first term? I don't know. So I took C++. And C++ was better than C, but also more meh than C. So it's kind of weird. Interesting. Oh, I guess that's just how life is. Anyways, yeah, so it was more... but then one thing that I knew for sure, I didn't know if I was going to continue learning C or C++, but I just really liked the feeling of being able to create something that can do something else. It's kind of like making magic. It's like you're the creator of something so cool and you can do so much. Possibilities are endless. And so I decided I wanted to be a computer engineer. And so in second year, when we were supposed to choose our major, I selected computer engineering. And so began my traditional route of learning what to learn as a computer engineer. However, the courses I took actually were not just computer engineering. They were computer and electrical engineering, which basically meant that I took a lot of hardware related courses as well, like VHDL, which I don't know what it stands for. I'm not gonna try to like bother my mind. But anyways, I took some hardware courses as well, which I didn't really like at all. So I wasn't quite sure like if it was me, like if I was made for front end or like if I was made for computer engineering, because I was just finding it really hard. I was not getting good grades. I was never like a really bright student at school. And I don't know, I felt like that hardware courses was not me. But then whenever I took like a C++ course, I would do really well in that. So I knew like, I like being able to like create something, but not something that's VHDL, because VHDL was like too much. And then the theoretical bits of it, I did not like at all. So in when I was studying in first year, or maybe it was second year, my dad had started his own business. Look at him doing so amazing again in a new country, moving to a new country, but starting his entrepreneurial stuff. So he started his new business and he wanted me to build a site. And he was like, well, you're a computer engineer, you're studying computer engineering, why don't you build a site for me? And I was like, oh, Dad, building a site is not easy. He was like, I'll give you $500 if you build me a site. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And so I learned how to build a site. So I had done HTML, CSS before, so I had some indication of where to kind of start. And then I started researching on like how to build a site with HTML, CSS. And then I think WordPress or maybe Wix popped up and it said, without any HTML and CSS, build a site. And I was like, okay, perfect, sounds good. And so I built a site with Wix. And when I built a site with Wix, they also had these like, I found it really easy to build a site with Wix, though I have to say, I had no idea of like where to even start building a site, how to host it and stuff, but Wix made it so easy. So they had Wix had like these drag and drop boxes. And I built a site that way. And then in some places, there would be places to add widgets. And so that would be like HTML widgets. So that was my first introduction to HTML, like by adding these widgets. And I think I was adding like email to his email, but just like this small kind of like wet my feet with HTML is how I got started into front-end development, web development. So then I built his site. He gave me $500 and I was like, hell yeah, this is pretty nice. What I loved about it was so creative and I made money out of it. And I was like, this would be fun. I should build more sites. My first internship that I applied in UBC was actually building site as well. And this time I was going to choose Wix as well, but the person, my supervisor had already picked the technology and he said, oh, we're going to build a Drupal site. I've already started it a little bit. I just want you to like make it pretty, make it beautiful. And I was like, I can do that. I don't know about how to do it, but I can do it. And I designed the site. I created the site in Drupal. And this was the first time that I had built something that was so technical, but also something that looked really pretty. This was a site for a research lab in UBC, and I really enjoyed the process. And so I was like, okay, I want to try to do more of this. So I'm going to see if there are any jobs for web developer that I can find. And when I looked up on Craigslist to look for jobs, I saw that so many people were hiring for web developers. And I also saw an ad for somebody looking to hire a web developer to build a site for their tattoo shop. And I was like, I could do that. So then I applied, they responded back and they said they would like to meet us. And I went in, talked about how I built a site, and I showed them the site, and then I showed them my dad's site. So by this time I had already built 3 sites. And so I showed them the sites that I had built, and I said, hey, this is what I'll do for you. I'll create it for you in WordPress. And the good thing about WordPress is that it is allow me to like choose a specific design for you, design template. And then later on you can add posts yourself. So you don't need me. And they were like, perfect, that's what we need. And so I was able to sell that ease of use to them, and they agreed to pay me $1,500. But anyways, this was the first time I was able to sell something that I can make and get a really decent amount of money for it. And I was like, okay, this is really fun. This can be something big. And that's how I started making my first websites for money. And after graduating from university, I knew this is kind of the direction I wanted to go. So I applied for TELUS Communications at the time for a job of automation engineer. I had no idea what this was supposed to do. I had taken like one small course in UBC and I was like, okay, I can figure it out. Like I went for the interview. I thought they would tell me more. They said you're going to be writing automation. You're going to be doing automation engineering. So you're going to be like writing integration tests. And I was like, okay, sounds pretty cool. But I had no idea what they were talking about. So I show up to work the first day and they tell me like, these are the test cases. This is a suite, blah, blah, blah. This is the feature. This is what we're testing. And I was like, wait, are we building the stuff or are we trying to break the stuff? They were like, no, the stuff is already built. We just want to make sure that we can prevent it from getting broken. And I was like, oh, okay, this is not what I wanted. And so 8 months down the line, I convinced my manager to take a chance on me, to give me a role as a front-end developer at TELUS Communications. TELUS Digital, not TELUS Communications. To give me a role as a front-end developer at TELUS Digital. And I, to this day, say my heart is full of gratitude for that manager. Because if he hadn't given me that chance, it would have been really hard for me to figure out what I wanted to do and if this was the direction I wanted to take. So he took a chance on me and he said, okay, why don't you learn this a little bit and I'll set up a buddy for you and he'll help you understand AngularJS at the time while you learn JavaScript and HTML, just catch up on your skills and take the small story. It was, I think, about just like adding a paragraph, something very simple. And he said, why don't you do the story? And if you can do this, then we'll give you something harder. And then this is how you learn and you'll understand if this is something you like. And I was like, okay, I'm going to learn JavaScript. And then I'm going to learn AngularJS. Actually, I think it was React.js. So he set up a buddy with me. That buddy helped me out a lot. I still say thank you to him for helping me out. And I started taking more and more Jira stories and some engineering tasks to finish and complete. And they started becoming more and more serious and more difficult. And I felt like I had no idea what I was doing, but I was like, I'm gonna do it anyway. So if there's a problem, just let me know. And I started doing more and more, pushing out more and more code. And 10 years later, I'm still pushing out code. Still have no idea what I'm doing.